Hey, so what's going on, everybody? So I've been playing Flappy Bird for hours now, and I finally figured out a way how to cheat and get to the end of Flappy Bird. So if you watch real carefully, one of these pipes coming up here. See, there he goes!
It's very easy to sit here comfortably in the modern day, look back at trends from days gone by that have dropped off, and wonder what in the name of sanity was wrong with us all back then. Big Chungus, Dame Tu Casita, Damn Daniel, and his stupid shoes. They're all deplorable examples from the last decade or so, and they do really make you wonder sometimes if our society's fucking doomed. However, I would argue that none of those aforementioned examples are anywhere near as interesting, mind-boggling, and rage-inducing as the curious little case of a funny little mobile app called Flappy Bird. Launched in 2013, the app would achieve its 5 minutes of fame at the start of 2014, and believe me, it really feels like 5 minutes in this case. Within 2 weeks of going viral and becoming a worldwide trending topic, Flappy Bird was gone, removed from all app stores by its own creator. When I look back, it does feel like this app was around for longer, in my head and experience, but at the same time, it also feels like a complete and total blip, a quick-fire bout of madness that was over almost as quickly as it began. And when I say madness, you're probably thinking of all those demented rage bait videos from back in the day, of people smashing the shit out of their phones, but I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, it's far more ridiculous than that. We're talking death threats, and phones with the app installed on it being sold for thousands of dollars. We're talking rumours of a lawsuit from Nintendo, and even an alleged murder reported in connection with this game. And yes, as maddening as it sounds, all of this was sparked by some random 8-bit mobile game that apparently took no more than 3 days to create. So how did this bizarre little gimmick cause all this nonsense then? And how did something that looked like a very simple trend and joke on the surface spiral this much out of control? Well, put on your safety harnesses and join me as I attempt to metaphorically flap through a load of 8-bit pipes and tell you the frustrating tale of Flappy Bird.
I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome to MLG Flappy Bird, the greatest game ever made in the history of mankind.
When I started making this video, I struggled just a little bit to decide where I should start the Flappy Bird timeline, but in the end, I've gone with 2007. The most important event of that year was, of course, my 8th birthday. But putting that crowning achievement aside, another notable achievement of the year was the launch of the first iPhone, announced by Mr. Turtleneck himself, Steve Jobs, in January and released a few months later in June. Now, we could sit here for an entire bloody video and discuss ways in which the iPhone has revolutionised mobile phone technology. There's iTunes for a start, which offered a new and much easier way to access, buy and download all your music. There's the design as well, which, if nothing else, has had a profound effect on the way that mobile phones have evolved in appearance. iPhone was arguably the first mobile phone to mainly focus on touchscreen in its design, and it was arguably the first phone to get touchscreen right as well. The touchscreen phones that you get before the iPhone was released, well, they were far from the sleek, responsive kind of shit you'd think of nowadays. However, the particular feature of the iPhone that we want to focus on today is the App Store. Launched officially in July 2008 with just 500 apps that you could download, this concept of a mobile app culture would arguably come to dominate and define the early 2010s. I don't know about anybody else, but I started secondary school in the early 2010s, and to me and all my fellow classmates, the concept of being able to download a load of games and tools and apps, whatever you wanted, onto your phone, it was just the coolest thing ever to us. You could effectively customize your phone into a little digital multi-tool packed with loads of fun games to pass the time, music or video apps, filters for your face or your voice, hell, even stupid gimmick apps like a digital beer you could drink or a soundboard or something. Apps, at this point of time, were brand new and about as trendy as they could get, and so naturally, they took the fuck off. Competitors like Google would very quickly launch their own versions of the App Store, and before long, the idea of downloading apps, games, and any other brain-rotting shit you liked was no longer something novel to Apple's iPhones. By the start of 2011 though, the App Store Store, just on its own, had over 350,000 apps available on it, and over 10 billion downloads since it launched 2.5 years ago. Now, it's important to point out that back in the early 2010s, apps and the app culture itself were very, very different to what they are today. Nowadays, apps are essentially just extensions of the wider internet. You can download mobile versions of your game, you can access mobile versions of your sites or your social medias. It's all very tightly connected and nicely put together, isn't it? Back in the early days of mobile apps, though, they were kind of regarded as a little bit separate to the internet you'd find when you logged onto your desktop PC. There was essentially a desktop internet and a mobile internet, and they were regarded just naturally as slightly separate. It would be a few years before the two kind of merged together into the one concept we have today. Apps at this point of time were a sort of cultural phenomenon in a little bubble of interest all of their own. They were a novelty that you gladly pay 99p for, and they were a part of the internet that the younger generation could definitively claim for itself. The mobile internet, for want of something better to call it, it was regarded generally as a bit simpler, maybe more clunkier than its desktop counterparts. It wasn't able to do as much, let's say, or wasn't as powerful, and as a result of this, the first earliest mobile games reflected this simpler nature. If you wanted a video game with an elaborate story, sophisticated mechanics, or a load of different shit to do, and a big map full of quests, you'd have to go to a PC or a games console for that. Nobody was expecting to find that kind of shit on a mobile app. Some of the most popular and well-known early mobile apps from this time include... Get ready for the nostalgia bait, you Gen Z scumbags. Angry Birds, Doodle Jump, Temple Run, Fruit Ninja, and Jetpack Joyride. You get the idea. And all of them, they follow a similar theme, if you think about it. You've got a simple, repetitive objective, or set of levels, where the focus is usually to achieve a high score of some kind. This is essentially the most sophisticated that mobile apps will get for quite a while, with even the most advanced mobile apps of the time, like Minecraft Pocket Edition, being far more basic in comparison to its PC counterparts. The mobile games in the early 2010s, they were essentially arcade games, packaged as apps, and obviously a lot more portable than the original traditional arcade machines, but they were still miles away from the kinds of video games you'd find on, say, a PC or an Xbox. And so that's the stage effectively set, and we now find ourselves in early 2013. Gimmick apps and simple, addictive games are all the rage and are reaching new heights of popularity across our digital world. The Apple App Store alone has 750,000 apps on it, and a staggering 40 billion downloads under its belt. And it's at this point in the story that an unknown 27-year-old Vietnamese programmer would enter the story and lay the foundations for some unprecedented cluster fuckery.
Come on, there we go, that's the easy one.
Fuck!
Why is this happening to me? Oh, there we go, shoot! Shot!
This is Dong Nguyen. I have no idea if that's how you actually pronounce his name, and I suspect that I've butchered it and will be slaughtered in the comments as a result. Please be gentle with me.
Nguyen Ha Dong from Vietnam.
One more time.
Nguyen Ha Dong from Vietnam.
Anyway, Nguyen was an avid video game artist and programmer, and had already made and launched some apps on the App Store already, to varying degrees of success. He liked the idea of simplistic arcade games, believing that even the likes of Angry Birds was too complicated a game for mobile apps. He believed that mobile games should be for people that were always on the move, and so therefore should be very easy ways to pass the time, and should have very easy and clearly laid out objectives and controls. In April of 2013, Nguyen would begin to work on a brand new arcade game-like mobile app, and apparently in just 2 to 3 days had completed a game called Flappy. He launched it at the end of that same month, and nothing happened. He got a few downloads, I'm sure, but generally went unnoticed, lost in a sea of almost 1 million apps for people to potentially download. Eventually, about 2 weeks after releasing it, Nguyen realised that the name Flap had actually already been taken by another app on the App Store. Perhaps this is why his app wasn't getting any traction. So he went back to the source code, he renamed the app, and in May of 2013, he relaunched it officially as Flappy Bird. And yeah, again, nothing really happened, to be honest. For the first 5 to 6 months of its life, Flappy Bird was almost completely unheard of. Yeah, sure, again, it would have had a few downloads here and there, and the occasional angry tweet about it would appear online, but in general, it was nothing groundbreaking. As with many beloved forms of media, the old bird of the flap was a bit of a slow burner at first, and it would be a while before anything of significance really happened. By around November of 2013, though, the first signs of the impending Flappy Bird tsunami were available for all to see on the horizon. All those infuriated tweets and posts began to slowly pile up, and eventually, at last, the ball began to start rolling. As December began, Flappy Bird entered the top 1,000 apps on the App Store, and in just 10 days, it had climbed to the top 250. Within a little under 3 weeks, in time for the new year of 2014, Flappy Bird would take the #1 spot on the App Store and truly get its first taste of going viral. The app was available on Google Play as well, and had been downloaded collectively by some 90 million people. This level of success for a very simple app that took no more than 72 hours to make, it must have been pretty sobering for Dong Nguyen at first. Before long, some of the biggest faces on YouTube like PewDiePie and Markiplier were playing the app. Next, it would appear in memes and articles all over the internet, before eventually bleeding into mainstream news and television. What was it about this particular weird app that allowed it to become such a viral sensation almost overnight? Well, truthfully, there's probably a lot of different factors that played into Flappy Bird doing so well, and the biggest of those factors is more than likely luck. But as well, Flappy Bird was launched in an earlier time, when the App Store wasn't as big and competitive, and a time when the expectations for mobile apps were different, perhaps less than they are today. Nguyen's hunch about games with simple, clearly defined mechanics and objectives was also right. The original Flappy Bird had no story or quest lines, no different game modes, no cosmetics or collectibles, nothing at all. Just one simple game mode, and one simple high score that you had to repeatedly try and beat. And what this means is, there's no distractions. There's nothing to break you out of that cycle of dying, restarting, making sillier and sillier mistakes as you get angrier, and so now you're determined to do better next time, because you know that you fucking can in your soul. So to say that the game was addictive then is probably a bit of an understatement. But, as if all that wasn't enough to channel the app's success, Flappy Bird was also completely free. And in a world where paying 69 to 99p for your ringtone, song, or app was perfectly normal and acceptable, this gave Flappy Bird a hell of an edge over its competitors. The app didn't have any in-game purchases, microtransactions, or collectibles either. The only thing it had was ads, but even these were pretty fucking tame. They only consisted of a little overlay at the top of your screen, which was enough to entice you, but not intrusive enough to break you out of the immersion. There were no overlays, no unskippable video ads that you had to find the X to get rid of, no. There was just you and the Flappy Birds, who apparently, according to my research, is called Faby. With these advantages under its wings, Flappy Bird took off in just about every sense of the phrase. And at first, Nguyen seems to be genuinely thrilled with this, as I'm sure any of us would be. There's posts from him thanking all for the support, and even offering tips and tricks on how to improve at the game. At the peak of its popularity too, it's estimated that Nguyen was earning about $50,000 a day from the app, so he must have been pretty chuffed with himself. However, almost as swiftly as it went viral, and in spite of all the initial positivity, the game began to attract negative connotations almost immediately too. In particular, that of causing rage within its players. In no time at all, the gimmick or the meme of this app seemed to have completely shifted from that of a simple temple run-like affair of trying to beat your high score to an app that will guaranteed make you flip the fuck out with anger. It seems like the rage associated with Flappy Bird was in good spirits and genuinely just a joke. I mean, rage comics of a particularly shit variety were quite popular at the start of the 2010s, and rage compilations, be it of children on Xbox Live or griefing on Minecraft, had been very popular on the likes of YouTube for ages already too. So it seems almost natural that an addictive and difficult game to play would gel quite well with the pre-existing penchant for angry humour. However, the internet eventually and predictably took the joke a little bit too far. a tale as old as time. Reports of people smashing up their phones began to appear and get more and more extreme, regardless of whether they were actually serious or just ironic and part of the joke. Before long, Nguyen was receiving death threats from enraged players online, and then reports began to surface of deaths apparently connected to this fucking app. Most notably was this one, claiming that a team had been stabbed 17 times by his own brother, all for beating his Flappy Bird high score. As it turned out, this story was thankfully a hoax, as were all the reports of deaths in connection with Flappy Bird. But at the time, when these stories were brand new, not everybody knew they were fake. And either way, it only fueled the rage-themed joke more and more and more. All of this must have taken quite a toll on poor Dong Nguyen. His DMs were filled with angry messages, he was being constantly pressed and hounded for an interview, and on top of that, he must have thought by this point that his app had become nothing but trouble. And so, on February the 8th, 2014, and weirdly just a few hours after putting out an update that made Flappy Bird easier, poor old Dong Nguyen put out this rather pitiable tweet. "I am sorry, Flappy Bird users. 22 hours from now, I will take Flappy Bird down. I cannot take this anymore." The death knell for Flappy Bird had been sounded. Faby is a bird that is an extreme alcoholic. Now, with that said, I think we can all agree that he likes to go to bars and get drunk with Homer Simpson. He is also the star of the Shame, Flappy Bird. He has a wife named Sarah and a boy named Katie. Faby was too drunk to know that Katie was a girl name. Every night when Katie is asleep, obviously, Faby drinks and drinks and drinks until he's drunk. So Sarah dumped him and left him with Katie, which is a pretty stupid thing to do. So he must go around his city to find food. Faby also hates the Mario brothers, and Luigi too. So the Mario haters, Bowser, that eviler Bowser clone, the other eviler Bowser clone, Ganon, and Sonic, joined a club called Marmageddon.
Do you get it? It's Mario and Armageddon.
What the?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a joke.
What the fuck are you talking about?
But still, it's a cool title.
That attempts to destroy those pesky plumbers. Mario, also, to make it harder for Faby to find food, put pipes there. Poor bird.
Alright, my friend has been upstairs for 15 minutes, and he won't stop yelling. Why are you doing this to me, man? Come on! Oh, are you kidding me? Come on! Bird! What are you doing? What are you doing?
The internet, upon receiving this harrowing news, naturally went completely ballistic. By all accounts, a lot of people thought that this was complete BS at first anyway. But, true to his word, and much to the dismay of Flappy Bird players, Dong Nguyen took down his treasured app 22 hours later on the 9th of February 2014. And with that, almost as quickly as it had blown up, Flappy Bird was completely gone. The game had been on the App Store for less than a year, had only started to get real traction about 3 months ago, and had been viral and popular for less than 2 weeks before it had been deleted. Naturally then, the internet wasn't ready to let Flappy Bird go yet, and more memes, rage, and rumours began to circulate far and wide on the internet. In particular, some rumours that Nguyen had actually committed suicide over the game began to surface around the place, and on top of that, a minor conspiracy theory of sorts got going, alleging that the game had actually been deleted as a result of a lawsuit from Nintendo. I mean, those fucking pipes look pretty familiar, right guys? Are we on to something something here?
No, you're not. Shut the fuck up.
As notorious as Nintendo is for suing people, though, this wasn't true either in this case, and eventually, poor Nintendo had to actually come forward and explicitly confirm that Flappy Bird's demise was not their fault. And yet, the masses were still not satisfied. They still had a Flappy Bird-shaped void within their souls. They still yearned for the app like crack addicts. And so, two things happened in the wake of Flappy Bird's passing. Firstly, and predictably, an ungodly amount of Flappy Bird clones appeared all over the various app stores of the world, all desperate to recapture the magic and become the official successor to the now doomed original. But none of them really succeeded. Flappy Bird, it seems, was a very special form of crack, which couldn't be sated by these bargain basement replacements. The second thing that happened, though, was all the surviving copies of Flappy Bird still downloaded on various people's phones. They became the digital equivalent of gold dust. Phones and tablets that still had the game installed were suddenly going up on eBay for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. This insanity thankfully didn't seem to last long, and I couldn't find any accounts of anybody actually paying fuckloads of money for such a phone on eBay. However, if you, or anyone you know, did happen to pay an arm and a leg for a Flappy Bird phone, I have this question for you. Have you emotionally recovered from the embarrassment of it all yet? Anyway, in short, there was no solution to the loss of Flappy Bird. Like I said, the shitty rip-offs just didn't scratch the itch in the same way. They were either not as good or just weren't as addictive somehow. Similarly, Nueng would continue to make mobile apps and games, hoping to shy away from the addictive, rage-inducing elements of Flappy Bird in his future projects. He even released easier, less addictive versions of Flappy Bird as the years went by. But again, all of these projects missed the mark. Nothing, it seems, could replace or replicate Flappy Bird. And so, in perhaps the weirdest twist of this funny little story, all of that incandescent rage towards the app transformed into a sort of fond nostalgia, almost overnight. And to be honest, it's a nostalgia that still somehow managed to stick around to this day a little bit. As of recording this video, it's been 13 whole years since Flappy Bird blew up, enraged the world, and was prematurely snuffed out. It's been dead for a hell of a while, but it hasn't been entirely forgotten. You can still play a version of it online, it's still a name and a logo that's easily recognisable to people, and though it's never made an official return, that's all about to change. Sort of. At the beginning of 2024, the trademark that Dong Nueng had on Flappy Bird finally ran out. He hadn't renewed it in time. I'm sure he didn't give a shit about it, to be perfectly honest. But that expiration suddenly created quite a tantalising opportunity. One that was seized upon by a certain Thomas Sharp. And so, with a team of developers, Sharp has been extremely busy over the course of 2024, locked away in what I can only imagine to be some evil and nefarious laboratory. There, he has been working on bringing Flappy Bird back to life, like some sort of fucked up Frankenstein's monster, and he has announced that it will be launching again in early 2025. Dong Nueng is obviously not on board with this revised version of the app, and from what I've read and seen, this newer version looks to be more like a sequel rather than a reboot of the original app from 2013. How well it will do in this day and age, whether it will be successful beyond a brief surge of nostalgia upon release, only time will tell. We'll just have to wait and see for those answers. Already from the trailer, this sequel seems to be far more convoluted and complicated than Nueng's original version. I mean, there seems to be like a quest line, different game modes, even skins and cosmetics that you can apply to your Flappy Bird. And these are all things that Nueng actively tried to avoid in his design of the app. And they're arguably the reason it got so successful and addictive in the first place. Whatever magic or uniqueness that weird little app had, I think it's all but evaporated at this point. You can emulate it, you can even try to recreate it, but I think it only exists in the past now. Flappy Bird wasn't just a widely popular app, it was also in the right place at the right time, in an earlier age of mobile technology that was widely different to the one we live in today. The whole of the internet, its memes, and its culture was so ridiculously different to what we have now, and I think that Flappy Bird could have only achieved the level of success that it did in that particular point in time. If Dong Nguyen had released his game 10 years later in May of 2023, I don't think it would ever even have been noticed, let alone have blown up. Flappy Bird, in my mind then, is like a very demented time capsule back into the world of 2014. I mean, they say that the past is a foreign country, right? And though 2013, 2014 doesn't sound like long ago when you say it, in the grand scheme of things, it was a totally different fucking world to what we have now. You can't truly and successfully bring Flappy Bird back in today's day and age because it would just be completely out of its own time. It'd be like taking a 13th century blacksmith, popping him in the middle of a modern industrial factory and expecting him to be right at home. Flappy Bird then is one of the most memorable cultural icons of the early 2010s. It's a glimpse back into the weirdness of days gone by. It's one of the earliest examples of a meme or a joke on the internet going a bit too far and getting out of hand. And, in perhaps the strangest twist of all, it's an increasing source of nostalgia for the aging Generation Z. I get it in a way, a lot of shit has happened over the last 10 years, and people will always yearn for what they believe were simpler times. But seriously though guys, this is fucking embarrassing. Get some better nostalgia, yeah? Flappy Bird's presence and influence are still somewhat felt today, and maybe they always will be. And it's a perfect example of just how fucking ridiculous the internet can get sometimes. Whatever you think of Flappy Bird, whether you remember it fondly, didn't give a fuck, or whether it was before your time, I think we can all agree that it demonstrates one thing perfectly. That the internet doesn't need any fucking excuse to collectively and completely lose its shit.
Let me try again.
Get your goddamn it up and keep it on fucking!
Jesus! Whoa, you were. I'm taking the tablet.
What you that motherfucker out of plot?
I'm taking the tablet away.
Goddamn fucking bird!
Let's get some wood glue.
Yeah, I'll glue it, okay? You glue it!
Goodness me, would you look at that? It's the end of a video. My, doesn't time fly when you're having fun? Thanks so much for joining me, boys and girls. I don't know why I became a fucking enthusiastic kid storyteller there for a second. Fucking sorry about that. Thanks very much for watching this video anyway though. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did find it interesting, please feel free to show me some support. Chuck us a like, leave us a comment, hell, maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You'll get some notifications every time I upload a degenerate little video. If you like my weird little mockumentary videos, there's a huge backlog of them on the channel now. There'll be a playlist at the end of the video that you can watch and binge if you're interested. And hey, if you're still interested in seeing some shit about this new Flappy Bird that's coming out in a few months, let me know in the comments below. If there's enough interest and support for the idea, I might even play the fucking thing when it eventually comes out. I did play some Flappy Bird, the original Flappy Bird, for this video. Some of the footage of the game you would have seen was me playing. I think my high score was like 38 or something like that, which is pretty woefully shit. Let me know your high score below, I guess. Or don't. I don't care. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you again for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Remember to take your vitamins and drink plenty of water. And I'll leave you with this passing thought. What do you call a dolphin in a forest? Fucked.